So what I wanted to share with you today is a little about how the IRT works, or how you can actually improve the speed of your delivery when you're doing CPI content. I've been working on the platform for like half a year, and a lot of times I've seen those areas where it takes a little longer to do things than compared to PI. And there's obviously areas that's where it's a lot easier to develop on. What we have worked on is a way that you can actually improve some of the normal CPI capability, use them for handling flows in a different way. So my name is Daniel Graves, and I've been working with SAP integration for over 15 years. And yeah, XI30, PI, PO, Business Connector a few times, but mainly SAP tools, Seaburger, stuff like that. I'm an SAP mentor, and I'm still that, and then I'm a father, and I guess when you really start to figure out that all the integration work or whatever you do, it's challenging, or it's different, because now I need to sell him that go to kindergarten every day and figure out how that all works. So that's a completely different way of working and handling things. So what I want to share with you a little about is some way you can make the support a little easier for you in a CPI context, how you can document the changes that you have made, how you can test new changes, and how you can get started with this, and then where we're heading with this this tool. So you may have seen that I do have a CPI course that teaches you how to get started. Yeah, trying to just condense the areas of CPI to the most relevant when you're building Iflows, because it's, yeah, as we said, not as doing normal CPI or PI development. There's a lot more components involved in it, and that's just what I have tried to condense, make what are the parts that I'm missing that I couldn't find in the documentation, and condense it into something useful. I've added some of my scripts to this as bonuses, and then one major project we did was how to query success. Sorry, it's success factor. I guess I need to update that. And getting employees that are starting out, so you're at least able to see that. But yeah. So I guess the big problem is, why do you actually need an extra tool on top of your existing SAP PI or CPI landscape? And I think in a lot of cases you don't, but all the stuff around it, if you have a good product, a framework around your CPI, it becomes a lot easier to handle these things, because you just need to look at one place, instead of trying to build in error handling in all of these different places. I'll just show you a little later how simple you can actually add some of these things to be able to fetch out the payloads and enable what's going on. So that is the reason why I think it makes sense. And then a big part of this is also the testing documentation of what you actually made, and yeah, I'll get to that. We've created the Figaf IRT tool, which is, well, which started to be an on-premise PI application that enabled you to test PI a lot faster. Then we transitioned it into as a separate application that did not rely to be run on the PI, and now it's able to run on the cloud platform or on a cloud environment. It can support both PI and CPI on the same platform, so that makes it just one place where you can actually do all your development, monitor what's going on in a streamlined manner. And obviously there's differences between these things. because it's two different platforms. But the overarching concept is pretty much the same. So the first part is a preview that we're working on, and one of the things that I've been a little reluctant to do is for the business users, when they want to monitor what's going on, they normally have this CPI monitoring, and in here you can go in. I guess I've been away too long. You can go in, find some of these iflows that have failed for some reason, figure out what was the problem in it. And a lot of times that is a little difficult to do. So that's why we have added this new monitoring capability where you can create demos, you can create multiple, or create a tile with multiple iflows in the backend. So once you're querying this, it will query all of these different messages, and you're then be able to see them in just one screen instead of having to rely on going and searching for multiple iflows. On top of this, you can also assign different roles, so users would only be able to see one row, and then you can actually drill down, and so you have just one generic cockpit that is showing these things. There'd be some filtering on top, so you can change state and search for specific parameters here. But basically just one view of your system, and this is just calling the OData services direct instead of having to rely on the direct CPI UI. You are using the Figaf, and this is just to enable business users to actually monitor what is going on. Yeah, you can specify the processes. The other part we have is, I guess, a bit more interesting. This is the part where you want to monitor what's going on in your system. You want to see if there's coming any failures. You want to notify someone that they need to react to this failure. And sometimes the error is not, or the message does not come as an error, and in that case you want to log what was changed, and based on that you want to be able to handle those questions or handle those processes. So some of the things that we have added is a recent, and I'll cover that a little later. We have options to send emails to a person. We have the option of actually creating a ticket on it. And we can also create a Jira ticket or any other events based on our web-based API. So the way this works compared to the other one is the IRT has an agent that calls your CPI tenant every 5 minutes, download all messages, collating to a filter, and then once it's downloaded the message, it will start doing rule processing on top of this. So yeah, the alerts saved in the PI database have context from the message, have the payloads, and information about the processing of what's going on in this case. And then obviously status on how the message was processed. So I guess it's easy to show you what this looks like. So here we have, this is just, so we can, on our system, we can create a set of one here that's just called flow, that's all our error messages. And we have one here that just processes all the messages that is in status log. And what we get from this, if we just look at the flow here, we got some messages that have failed for some reason. And we can see we're getting some errors on this one. We can drill down and actually see what's going on. We have the option to open on view the real data on it. And what we can do is, if we know why this is happening, we can create a test case or a rule on this. So this is a normal error. It says if we have this HTTP response, we want to do something with this, and this is so we can create a description. Hi. And we can have specific information if you have information in your knowledge system or anything like that, that you can actually put this into. If you have specific systems that's relevant for this, you can also add them to it. And then we have, if you want to do reprocessing or not, I'll get back to that later. And is that actually something we want to deal with, or is this just something that is kind of if, for instance, if it's a business that are sending wrong data, we can just say that the status of this is completed. We can, and not create an alert we need to follow up on. We can also add links, for instance, to Jira. We're using SAP here, or it's just a webhook you can configure to do whatever you want with this data. And we can then save it. So next time we're getting a message that looks like this, this will be triggered. And let me just try to trigger one of the other ones. So the other thing we have is, in this one, this is just everything that's being logged. And we can then see in my Slack that I just got, no, that's not this one. Oh, here we can see I just got a new notification that we needed to create a case for these things. So it's really easy, and the only thing we did here was in our Iflow we set the status to. So if we look at the status on the Iflow here, the only thing we have added is that the receiver is equals to log, and then on here we have set up this one. We have just set that it should send to out here. We have not specified email, and we can see actually the message that we're getting from here. So it's pretty simple to set this up. This can be done in a normal content view where you're getting this data. Yes, so that was, so pretty simple to set up alerts handling. And then the next part, I guess, is the interesting one also. So we wanted to give you a simple way to do restarting. And I guess normally you have the two options. You have the JMS enterprise messaging, or you can put messages into a data store and then trigger it based on that. And both of these have some drawbacks and some opportunities, obviously, on how they can be processed, what you need to do in those cases. I just wanted to make a simple way that you can do this if you don't have these two other options, or they become too complex to actually handle and set up automation on top of. Currently it supports the SOAP, HTTP, and Process Direct adapter. And the thing you actually need to do is you need to set up two scripts on this. So one script in the beginning that will just take all the messages, the full message, the attachments, save it into the full message, and header attributes, save it into header property. And then if the message fails, you just need to put in the error script that will then save the message. And then for further processing, you can actually fetch the data from here. And then if if you're using the process direct adapter in here, you would just need to deploy a CPI process direct flow. And obviously, I don't think this is something you want to run on all your flows, but on some of them, it would make sense to run it because you want the later processing. But we decided to move the logging to the MPL to after the process has failed, because then we know, is that something that's relevant or not? And then we just keep it in memory. And I guess that would not take up too much processing power. A little about how we do try to ensure that you cannot reprocess the message too many times, which is really important. And it's not like in CPI where you just have exactly once you can run it, restart the message, and it will not allow you to rerun it multiple times. In this one, we needed to build this in. So this is basically how we are trying to avoid duplicates. So let me just show you what this looks like. I'll just send a new message. Hopefully this won't fail. So this is on this one. So we just have a, for querying these things, so now we can see what we have. This message that failed, it's language detection. And we have this IRT save message here. And if we just look at this one, we can see it's a JSON document, and we got the body as a base 64-bit encoded. And obviously there's probably things that we want to improve in this. And we can see the reason for the error in this one. And this is also extracted. So we can see it up here, the reason for the error. And we can see here that it can be sent again. So if we just trigger it again, resend, on here we will then see that it has been resent with the specific correlation ID. And then we can actually, so then it will invoke and say, okay, now you cannot resend this again. So this is the monitoring, the restart mechanisms that you don't need to build. You can just find it in a simple format. And yeah, you can set up reprocessing 3 times, and then hopefully after, or when it has been reprocessed 3 times and doesn't find an error, it would notify you. There's some limitations. I don't really know how this will affect your count of SAP connections, which obviously in some cases is relevant for your licensing. I would imagine that if you're using the SOAP and HCP, it would not affect it, but Process Direct may have an impact. And then currently you cannot view the payload. It's base 64-bit encoded, but that's probably something we'll fix to either to be able to see the message or be able to change it if you have the right authority for it, and if that is a requirement. The other thing that's really important to this is that you're actually able to do change management of your CPI flow. So I had a conversation with a business analyst that said, hey, we have this problem, this it needs this small fix, go fix it. And I made the change. He tested it. I deployed on production in 40 minutes or something like that. And obviously it wasn't a big change, and it was specified, go in this XSLT and make this change. So it wasn't like I was super good or anything like that. It was just a simple thing. But a lot of the comments around that was, yes, that's good, and we can make the same changes in production. But how can we actually make this in a real world, being able to document and change this? And that is what I wanted to do when share with you now a little about how the IRT can actually help you with your CPI transports. We're trying a little towards to move or the DevOps. And obviously DevOps is a pretty broad terms, and everybody have their own views on this, and there may be different approaches to it. But my take is it's something that makes it easier to do development, change management, and automate as many things so you can get changes to production as fast as possible with as few resources as possible. So the first part is obviously if you're doing a change to an Iflow, and I think on one of these messages, we will just make a change to an Iflow, and obviously don't do this live, but I think I will anyway. Let's just see. So we have an Iflow here. We got a request to change it because someone is adding invalid characters into it, and I have then just added a script. Oh. So we have a script here. Where user have added these things, and it's just as script number 1. It is probably not an ideal script, but we're just replacing if someone has a single quote. And we want to save it as a new version. Remove double quote. And we'll deploy this. And that's pretty good. It didn't take that long time to fix this error. But now we need to document what was actually being changed here. And if I go to my CPI tenant, I will then synchronize this. And there's also a batch job that will synchronize every couple of minutes or something like that. And normally it is pretty fast to do this. And based on this input, I can actually see what are the iflows that have been changed, how many new versions do we have, and what's happening in the process. So we can look at what has been changed. We can see that yeah, that was the language detection that was changed. So that's okay, and that was what we've changed. So we'll create a new ticket for this, and tickets could be like a service request. So if you have service request or whatever you want, you can either, yeah. Right now we just have external numbering. Big double quote, it's a service request or an incident because it was something that failed. And so right now we have fixed a new language detection. We want to see if there's any test cases on this. Oh, not that one. Look up test cases. So we can see we have some test cases here. We will select one of them. And this would actually allow us to rerun a set of regressions on top of this. So let's just try to run this testing template. So the testing is built into this, and with this we are able to, so we can see here what's being processed. I guess this one is the most relevant thing. And here we can see all the messages being sent. And the way we're doing this is we're setting the iflow into trace mode, both when we want to do a record of messages and when we want to do testing. And then we can send the message in, verify that the messages look identical at all the different steps that we have. And there's ways that you can reject or cancel some of the messages because, or some of the changes because you know they're always added a timestamp in this period of time. So we can see we're getting an unexpected message, and this is because we have added this extra flow into the processing. So that's okay that we're doing that, so we can mark this as the new test case, and then we can actually run on top of this and handle it in that way. So we have documented that we have made a change. It works. If we wanted to, we could also record a new test case and add it to it, where we'll test with this failed message. Maybe let's just try that. So we'll create just one message. So now we have a message here, and it is starting recording. And now we'll just send this thing with the double quote. And this is the way you're creating test cases, and it can be done, multiple different ways, and coming from other areas. But now we just have the same test case here. We can view all the different messages that we have collected from this one, and then we can actually create this as a test case. And if you just want to see what we are sending here, we can view the payloads. So we can see we're getting this, all of these properties that's being set. And one pretty cool thing is once you have your test case here, so if we're creating this as a test case, so now it's a test case. And what you can actually do is, if you are opening this and want to do a Groovy script and figure out how does the message actually look on this one, you can create this Groovy script template. And with this, it is pretty easy to fill in all of the relevant information, because you got them already here, making it a lot easier to set up these things, run the script, and obviously sometimes you may want to delete these things, but it does speed up creating of a Groovy script. So now we have found the bug, we have fixed it, and now we want to do our transport. But before we can do our transport, we need to set up what was actually being changed in this one. So we have our language detection, and we have a configuration that says on our development tenant, this is the sandbox, and on the production, the API is probably maybe, I don't know. And in this one, we have just set up the same system to be both. Let's see, wasn't it? Okay, so I just created one landscape here with these iflows in, and so we have a test landscape here where we just have added it as a virtual sender, but if we could also have added an external system as your production and QA system. This was mostly just for us, so we could develop it and see if we could transport these things without affecting too much thing that was going on. So we'll open our ticket again. We can then take our language detection. We will go to our transport. We'll create a new transport. I guess takes the name from here. It says on this test landscape, and we get our language detection here. So now we've created a new transport with this for the service request. Let's see. And what we can actually do is we can import this to our QA system. And then once it's imported, it will do configuration. And once that is done, so it imported successfully, so we can see it here. So if we go, there should be one that's called guess it was this one, our demo here. We can see we got our Iflow here. We can look at our configuration here. And then hopefully this says our production UAE. So we actually have just one way of handling our configuration across the landscape. And that's really good if you have passwords or password properties that changes or URLs that changes. But obviously, the fewer you can have of them, the better. And yeah, if it was on a different system, the package name would then be just demo. So yeah, we got our business reason for making a change. We tested and we created a new test case to encom for this change we have made. We were able to configure the Iflow configuration. We made an individual transport across the landscape. So that is the two main components, the logging and this full DevOps lifecycle that allow you to actually take an incident, track it, develop it, test it, and the logging part that allow you to actually figure out what's going on, and if there's any errors, handle it. You can sign up and try it out at figaf.com/IRT Cloud. There's a free 30-day trial. You can try out and see how it works on your system. We have some different packages, and for if you just want the monitoring and support, it's like 150 euros a month. And if you want the DevOps where you're able to do much more of these things and understand what is in your landscape, what are the changes that's happening, it's 400 euros a month, and you get some test cases here, change tracking tickets, and the API ability, so you can actually so all of the objects are fully API enabled, so if you want to create something specific for your case, you can develop in this format. IRT also both run on a server solution, so we're created from PI. So we have an on-premise installation. You can run and test both CPI and PI on the same system and develop this workflow in this format. We are not able to do, yeah, it's different what we can do on the different systems because of the architecture of the platform. But yeah, you can take the IRT, run it in on an on-premise installation or cloud landscape if you want to do that. We do have a container installation available also. Some of the things that we're working on, we want to do the same with API management, that you're able to transport and track these changes, just as we have with the CTT or with IRT. The message monitoring, as I showed you the mock-off, and then I guess some of these may change priorities and stuff like that. You know, the SAP normal roadmap, what's being changed, and something about health check. What are the status? How much is in your database? Your memory consumption, something like that, and set up alerts if it goes above 70% or whatever you specify as limits. If you're expecting a message to be sent at a specific period of time, and we do not see this specific Iflow between 5 and 6 every day, then it should trigger an alert. Documentation. You want to be able to document these Iflows and what are the dependencies of them. So what are the dynamic properties we have them, or what are the process direct adapters that's being used. And the cool thing about this documentation is that we'll also show you all the different changes that have been made over time. So you can see we have this Iflow, it has been changed 5 times, and these are all the 5 different tickets for it. So we actually know statuses of these things. And then we also want to be able to, when we're testing, so if you have success factor system that we know are changing a lot, all the data that you cannot continuously create new employees, that it's able to mock this the service in a better way. And then it's open. So if you have any questions, and some features that you think that would be really useful, do let me know either on the chat or unmute yourself. I think that should be possible. Or else, send me an email. So we are the way we're normally working is some of these things I pick up that customers are having challenges with these areas, and then we'll try to see how we can actually implement something that makes it easier to do your CPI development, because the more of these things that we get to solve, the better.